Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Focus on Parliament. My name is Agather Atuhaire, and we are here to discuss Parliament and how it represents the people that delegate it, that give them the mandate to represent them in Parliament. And today we want to discuss its appropriation role, considering that the budget for 2022-2023 financial year was passed by Parliament last week. The budget that was passed is 4.1 trillion shillings, having been increased by about 1 trillion from 47.2 trillion that was initially tabled in March through a corrigenda that was tabled on May 18th in Parliament. And yes, we had this discussion actually when the budget was being scrutinized by the committee, the budget committee. We had a member of the budget committee on this show, Honorable Kateshumba Dixon, and we discussed that the priorities of that budget, just like it has been before, are not right, that there are some areas that need more funding than others. And I remember Honorable Katesh had assured us that Parliament, now that it is before Parliament, it will ensure to right what has gone wrong, like what the executive hadn't got right. But I think we haven't seen a big of a change with the amounts that Parliament has allocated to the different sectors. And that's what we are going to discuss, the priorities, what they should be. Are there places they should have or could have gotten money to put in places that need it, considering what Ugandans and the economy are going through? And I am discussing that with two ladies. Yes, today I have an all-lady panel. Two ladies, and I'll start with my immediate neighbor, my friend Honorable Winnie Kiiza, the former leader of opposition. You're welcome, Honorable.
Thank you, Agatha.
Yes, we also have Charity. This is your debut, like the first time on this show, and Charity Ahimbisibwe. Charity, I don't know what you do now, but I am sure everyone has seen you everywhere and advocating for things to go well in this country. You're welcome to the show, Charity.
Thank you very much, Agatha. I'm at the Electoral Laws Institute as the executive director there. Electoral Laws does awareness on elections.
Just like what said where you are was
but
doing.
This time we look at the laws that have passed to improve electoral processes, and we raise awareness around those.
Okay, that's good. So, Honorable Winnie Kiiza, I am going to start with you. When you look at the budget that Parliament passed, and when you put into consideration what the economy is going through, I was with you here and Dr. Fred when we were discussing the skyrocketing prices. And since then, they have even, increased further. When you look at this budget and this economy, how does it cater for what citizens are going through?
Thank you so much, Agatha, and the viewers. I would like to say congratulations to Parliament for doing their role as provided in the Constitution, the appropriation role of the Parliament of Uganda. And I'm glad that this time the budget passed early enough according to the provisions of the law that says by 31st of May, they should have passed the budget. Like I said before, many Ugandans get bothered with the budget after Parliament has passed it. And it's so sad that they don't follow this budget from the word go to the end. The budget process begins far back from September. So by the time the budget is passed, it has gone through a series of stages, and each stage is as important as the end. So it is very unfortunate that many Ugandans want to deal with the budget after it has been passed.
That's what we have the representatives for, right?
Yes, and I told the Ugandans then that ask your members of Parliament, beginning from September, how far are you with the budget? What are you intending to put for us? Begin harassing them in respect of what you think should be, your concerns when it comes to the budget processes. That is when even members of parliament will find it very interesting to get interested in this budget process. Otherwise, even many members of parliament, by the way, don't know these processes and how very important they are to the people that they represent. And so for me, the budget that was passed, of course, as usual, it's not a people-centered budget. When you look at our country, Uganda, it's a country that is predominantly an agricultural country. Many of those who are into the agricultural sector are the women. Of course, I would have said the young people, but the young people do not have land, access to land. At least the mothers still have that chance of either farming from their husbands' gardens. And when you look at what was passed in the Department of Agriculture, the whole agriculture ministry of the country, the money that is supposed to go to my mother in Ichibuku, my mother in Kasese, the other one in Ikisoro, the other one in Amolatal, it is just 542 billion shillings for all the Ugandans who are involved in agriculture. We are talking about food being an issue currently. And of course, government officials will get out and tell you, you know, the food items are also getting higher in terms of costs because of the war in Ukraine. You know, it's a problem everywhere. And me, I have been telling them it's incumbent upon the managers of this project called Uganda to ensure that they plan better for the Ugandans. I was hoping that possibly, now that we have challenges in the countries where we are doing much of the importation, that possibly now the budget of agriculture will look different.
Yes.
What I see is it's a budget that is supposed to take care of the minimum, bare minimum of the Ugandans. When you compare the budget of the entire country of agriculture to the budget of State House, you wonder where our priorities are. Only State House has 777 billion shillings. And this is what the members of parliament passed. That just the House of President Museveni should have 777 billion, while all of us Ugandans who must survive on agriculture are given 542 billion. When you look at what is going for the education of all the children that we have as Uganda, and moreover, after keeping them out of school for 2 years, we give them 641 billion. So you begin asking, are we really working towards improving the education of this country? Are we working towards ensuring that the agriculture sector caters for people and now brings up what we want to do? Modernization of agriculture. You know, we even had a plan for modernization of agriculture. But where we abandoned that plan of modernization of agriculture, I don't know. So when you look at this budget and you see how much has been given to the Minister of Agriculture in terms of budget,
it's not even 5%
it is
of
not
the
even
budget.
5% of the budget, and yet the Maputo Protocol gives us 10%.
10%.
So we are not even a half of the percentage, which means we are not going to adhere to the requisitions in the Maputo Protocol, and also answering the sustainable development goals.
Yes.
So we might not fight hunger. And this means the poverty levels may continue increasing, since majority of our people are dealing in agriculture. So there is little, as I may say, that is going to the common Ugandan person who is in agriculture, a common Ugandan person who is looking at the education of their children as the only safest bank that they are going to have in terms of investment. So to me as a person, I still believe that we are far, far beyond what we should be budgeting for. You know, as a country, many people say we are in peace. We are peaceful. We are sleeping. I would have seen the budget of defense going low. Because really we are not supposed to be spending so much on defense.
Correct.
The fact that we now no longer have any wars that we are fighting, there is no insurgency, and that is what they have been telling us, that we are secure. They have secured even our future. I wouldn't have accepted, or I wouldn't have really been among those who would have given the 3.6 trillion to the Ministry of Defense, because there is less that we should be budgeting in terms of defense, since the country is safe and secure. But when you also look at our expansion policies, we are fighting wars in the DRC, and you begin asking yourself, these wars really, are they justified? Where every single day we are spending over 200 million shillings. Every single day we are spending over 200 million shillings. Then you begin asking yourself, really, is this for the good of the people? I come close from a place that is neighboring Congo, but when I throw my binoculars across, I don't see the real ADF that we went to fight in Congo. They will all the time say we have now taken control of this territory. You don't see what they have taken control of.
Maybe your binoculars is not effective.
No way! I am a Mukonzo. Majority of the Bakonzo are in Congo. It's our people who are just being tortured. So I really don't see why, first of all, the 200 plus million shillings is being spent in Congo. As a Ugandan, even when I know that the trade between Uganda and Congo should be boosted, I don't see why we should go to put off the fire in the neighbor's house when our own house is burning. The 80 billion that was passed for the roads in Congo, while Kampala is just a seat of potholes, the entire country is having a problem with the road network, then I begin asking myself, really, are we so bothered about what happens in the neighborhood than getting bothered with what is happening in our own country? The other day, we were very close friends to Rwanda. When Rwanda decided to close its boundaries, we started crying here. Now, supposing one day Congo wakes up and says, okay, thank you for doing the roads, but we have closed our boundaries. We are not going to carry our roads.
Thank you.
Remember, Congo is still demanding money from us. Close to 400 billion was budgeted to sort the issues in Congo, even when we know that the money for Congo was almost 200 billion. So you begin asking, where is the difference going? Many of our people in this government will do a budget which they know is having money for themselves, not really to service the needs of Ugandans. That's why you will see that even with the lack of accountability for the money that was given to Munyonyo Commonwealth Resort in 2008, they don't even feel ashamed to say, let's even put money under Munyonyo. What do we have in Munyonyo that we are servicing?
Okay, Honorable, we'll get
many
back to
times
that.
when you really see what the planners of Uganda are doing for this country, you begin asking, are these people really planning for the Ugandans, or they are planning for themselves?
Let me bring in Charity to see what she thinks. Charity, we are talking about priorities. Honorable said the budget is not people-centered, and this is not new. When Maria Chiwanuka was Minister of Finance, one day she said that she wishes, I think I was at an event where she said that I think when I die, they should write on my grave's tombstone, not enough, money is not enough. Yeah? But increasingly it looks like in this country, the problem is actually less about money being enough, but more about priorities, because we have talked about priorities of these budgets of this country: health, education, agriculture, vis-a-vis defense, state house, and all those things. What do you think is the reason we have a government that really seems to not listen to the people? Because this talk show, the other talk show, everywhere, the newspapers will have that year in, year out, but they will come back the same the next year. What is the problem exactly? Should we still think money is not enough? Should we think we have a government that is really not pro-people, that it would rather put money in Congo than its own people here? Would you have an idea? Could we pinpoint on what the issue is?
So, if you look at global politics, and if we have been looking at what has happened around the world, and I'm just lifting myself a bit away from the budget in Uganda for a bit and return back there. The Americans were getting a lot squeezed with their fuel prices and the day-to-day living. What did the American government do? And Ugandan government, when we raised this issue, they said, Uganda is not America. America went to their fuel reserves picked fuel and put it out there for its citizens to enjoy. In Kenya, next door, the minimum wage was raised such that the ordinary Kenyan would have a bit of marginal propensity to consume or money that they can use on a daily basis. But what happens to a Ugandan? Tighten your seatbelt. There is nothing from this side. There is nothing we're going to do for you, is what we are told. And beyond tighten your seatbelt, Agatha, there is the whole issue of, you get a sense there is too much corruption happening. We see it on daily on the news. Then we see a budget that doesn't seem to connect with the needs of the people at all. A Ugandan is saying, I cannot even afford the cassava. You've said, go eat cassava, but I can't afford the cassava. Those who have grown their cassava, they are stealing it from their gardens.
And it goes to the agriculture she was talking about.
It goes back to the agriculture she's talking about. But people are stealing it because they're saying, the president told us to eat cassava. Let's look for the next person who has cassava. People who have their gardens of 2 acres, now they're stealing from them. And so even the ones who are being stolen from themselves are asking the question, what do I do next? No food. You can't take your children back to school. The school fees went up. And you don't know where to get that money from. You're supporting a whole load of people around you. And the question is, the government is telling you, we don't care. And we have seen that in Zambia, the president said, for me, I'll not do any more external trips. All the money which would have gone to external trips is now seated here with me. But what do we see in Uganda? 420 billion for members of parliament to do external trips. And it is there in the budget. 420 billion just for trips. To where? To the parliament in the neighboring Commonwealth countries.
I am not sure about that figure. I have seen their budget altogether being 800.
Yes, their budget altogether.
420 billion to be for trips. What would they remain with for salaries?
Salaries and the other should negate the rest of it. But that is the figure that is there for the trips, the regular trips. That is it. That is the figure that is there. You go and cross-check, Agatha. Their general budget is 847 billion. If you look at that, I'm saying half of 847 billion is on travel. So you have then emoluments. You have fuel, which they are saying, okay, now you people, fuel has increased for everybody, even us, we are feeling it in our pockets. But for them, they have somewhere they're starting. How about the one who doesn't have anything? Agatha, I want to remind you that during COVID-19, and this was supposed to be a post-COVID-19 recovery budget. During COVID-19, Ministry of Gender, I'm going by Ministry of Gender statistics. I'll try not to go by civil society statistics, because civil society statistics say over 5 million Ugandans lost jobs. But the Ministry of Gender says 1.8 million Ugandans lost jobs. Now, 1.8, those are the white-collar jobs. How about the Nkolera Zange, the ordinary people? How many lost jobs? So
those working in bars that were closed for a long time, and restaurants.
Even hotels are still struggling. The tourism industry is still struggling.
Yes.
So what I had expected with this budget was, if you're looking at recovery, because even if you try to distance yourself from the people, like you have said, it's not a people-centered budget. And we don't care what is happening to the people, as long as for us, who are the people, we have money to take us around. So for us, the people, we have fuel, we have travel budgets, we can spend a night. The speaker's night out allowance when she travels abroad is 6.8 million. That money alone, for me, I'm happy to receive it as a monthly salary. She is taking it as one night out. The deputy speaker takes a night out. Now it has escalated. Before now, it was 3.5. It has now shot out of the window. For the deputy speaker, it's now at 5.5. How it got to those monies, I'm also here seated and I'm wondering, how do you sit there in your comfort zones when we are here, we don't have any money, and you're shooting these budgets? And the employees of parliament, one night out is 1.9 million. So any staff member in parliament, which staff members have grown in number, because we now have about 200 people who are employed in just this 1 year.
And add that employed irregularly, because we have never seen an advertising jobs for people to apply, which is what the law requires.
Exactly. Now, they earn 1.9 if they traveled out. Let's assume 50 of them had travels out. 1.9 per night. and they only traveled for 4 nights. Multiply that money. Just see what I am talking about. So in essence, you, the ordinary Ugandan, you can go ahead, eat your kawukumi, who cares? But for us, the people, we have what we have. But it will come back to don't. Because the taxes that they aim to say, and URA actually collected below the tax target that they had, and they claimed it was because of COVID, it's only going to get worse with the next tax collection. Because there will be nobody to collect any money from. There is nothing there for them to tax.
Yes.
So as much as you say you want to widen the tax base, who are you widening it on? A poor population? A poor population that has grown in number. I was actually looking at the UBOS statistics of 2021 in terms of poverty growth. We now have more than 59 million Ugandans who can't live beyond $1 a day. Okay, altogether we are 42 million. That is what UBOS is saying, 42 or 43 million Ugandans. But the young facet of people who are working on a daily basis, they can't afford that $1.
Yeah, there's also BOU figures recently saying only 1 million Ugandans earn more than 1 million.
Yeah.
And they're still talking about only those in the formal sector. So
Yes,
only
and
1 million.
URA is collecting taxes from those ones, and that figure keeps dwindling. It's likely this year you will only have maybe 500 Ugandans who are earning that kind of money. So who will you tax? And how will you service your humongous budget, which I am seeing here? And your tax debt, you have money which you're taking to increase on your debt is 1.7 trillion. And all of them have acknowledged it. Even the Minister of Finance came out and said, you see, this 1.7 trillion, we need it. All countries do the same thing. In future, we shall find a way of paying back this debt. But our debt keeps growing, Agatha. It never goes down.
yeah.
So this, I think for me, like Honorable Kiiza here said, that you see, we raise these questions when the budget has gone. Now we have a chance with the budget that comes next year.
So when we raise them this year, they should always be catered for in the next budget.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it never happened.
Yeah, we have a chance with the budget that is coming next year. But we also have a chance with the so-called supplementary budgets that will come in between the year before we get to next year. We can begin to think differently and prioritize differently. Because the way the things look like, housing allowance, right now, the speaker, there's a rumor within her own house from the people that I spoke to in parliament saying taxpayers are going to build a house for the speaker. First time we will ever do this.
And her deputy.
And her deputy. The first time we'll ever do this. Build a house for the speaker and the deputy when they get housing allowance. I really find that not usual. Because if you are a people person, if you care about the people, then how do you take housing allowance and also expect that the taxpayer is also going to build for you a house?
Take salary, take housing allowance, take per diem, but also...
And I don't know, Agatha, whether the salary still remained at 35 million. But when I was checking, the money they were given to buy the cars that Honorable Winnie told us, that anyway, they have already bought the cars.
Yeah, they bought the cars in the first month.
There are 529 MPs. And every MP, they bought them a car of 200 million. That was the last time I checked. I don't know whether that figure went a bit higher.
No, that was the only time they buy the cars once.
Or the figure went low. Because before then it had been 60 million. No. Before, yeah, the years before, when they first...
100 million.
100 million came to the second time. The first time it had been 60 million. Then the second time it went to 103 million. Then this time it shot to 200 million. That's why I'm asking, I could have lost a figure somewhere. It could be 300 million and I lost a figure.
The next figure will be in 2026.
Exactly.
Now.
Now in 2026, you might be talking about 500 million for an MP's car.
Okay, hold that right there. Let's go back to the MP's cars later. Honorable, I wanted to ask you, you had talked of, and also you can respond to any other of the things Charity raises if you want, but the question I had for you was, you talked about the process and how Ugandans come in at the tail end. But I'm going to tell you that in the minority report, of the committee of budget. There's a minority report from mainly the opposition MPs on that committee. They talk about how the committees, the sectoral committees, when they were considering the budget, how they said this prioritization, the way things are, is not how they should be. Why don't you move money here and put it here? So they indicated key areas that need more funds. And of course, it was what you talked about: health, education, agriculture. They are saying, for example, why are you giving this much money to State House when Arua Regional Hospital needs 9.9 billion to rehabilitate the orthopedic ward, when the Naguru Hospital needs the intensive care, also maintenance of 400 million. And there are many, all the hospitals, they table them here. And I have told you before, I think, Honorable Winnie, I went around hospitals doing a research on the health sector, and I saw that things are worse than actually what we sit here and think. That you find a hospital which goes 3 months without medicine, not even Panadol.
Correct.
That you find a hospital whose workers are living in a place I cannot enter. I cannot. So dilapidated, you look at it and say,
is this where
and the person I was doing research with said, it now looks like a punishment to study to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So the committees suggested this. But this didn't change. Parliament didn't change this, which we actually expect. Like I told you that the Honorable said we would write what wasn't right from the executive. So what else can we do? How else can we go about this to make sure that when we participate, our views, because these sectoral committees hear from these people, these hospitals, but they go and it's not considered.
Agatha, many times I've been asking myself, what is it that Ugandans want? Because even when we raise a red flag to Ugandans to say, look, someone is cheating you, they don't want to listen. Because if I had the power, I would have changed the planners. And when I talk about the planners, the budget is a budget of the president.
Yes.
So the others are just doing work for the president. That's why you will hear that even when there is a supplementary and Parliament has tried to reject it, then the president will call his team to Changwanzi or call them to State House. Members of the opposition, and now when you talk about the minority report was authored by the Shadow Minister of Finance, the Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi. In that minority report, Mwanga Chivumbi was trying to guide government on how to plan better for the Ugandans. Even when they laid the budget framework paper, Mwanga Chivumbi again came down with issues that he thought would have helped government to plan better. He said, we are recovering from COVID.
Yeah.
If we are recovering from COVID, the budget should reflect the recovery processes.
Correct.
If we are talking about putting more money in tourism, because we are now calling people to come, tourists to come, but we have not sorted the issue of increasing money, the tourism subsector to receive money, because we realize that also the tourism subsector is now a contributing center to the GDP of this country.
Very much.
And to the tax base.
And to the tax base of the country. But you see that every other financial year, less and less is given to tourism. And yet we keep going out, we are going to market Uganda.
We are
gifted
in Dubai.
By nature. We are in Dubai Expo. We are where? But how much do we really, after going for these expos, after marketing the country, how much do we put into the sector to make it reflect what we speak? And it comes back to what I said, that the planners of this country, the leaders of this country, only put money where it matters to them. That's where you will see that defense, and much of the money in defense is classified expenditure. classified expenditure which they will spend without anybody putting
A finger.
a finger to it.
Or questioning, yes.
Or questioning it. President Museveni will just dish it as he wants. That's why you will see that the budget of State House is bigger than the budget of the Ministry of Health, for example. Is bigger than the budget of the Ministry of Education, where we have over 15 million learners. So you keep asking yourself, where are our priorities? You know, when we were in Parliament...
You haven't answered my question, Hannah. And you said if you had the power. I was asking, what else can
We do.
Ugandans do?
I said if I had the power, I would have changed the team
the
of planners.
planners.
Yes.
That's what I said. I would have changed the team
So
of
now
planners.
you want to blame
because
them for...
every other day we raise these flags that the people you are giving responsibility are not planning for you well.
Does that include parliamentarians?
Even the parliamentarians. You know, first of all, the budget that comes that parliamentarians look at is the president's budget. Begin with the head, because that's where the problem is. Change the president. After changing the president, put in a president who will take care of the needs of the people, and then support the president with the members of parliament who will know that they are people's representative, and therefore their first call of duty should be to better the lives of the people that they represent. So because of that, you will now see that each person who is put in a position of leadership first thinks of how do I make myself better before they think of making the others better.
Yeah.
Let us see how to reduce the levels of corruption. Because when you look at this whole budget, a lot of corruption is in it. Many of the loans that we borrow, you know, Agatha talked about the debt burden of the country. Charity.
Yeah.
We are the
Many
same.
of the loans that we borrow do not go to service the purposes for which they were borrowed. It shouldn't surprise you that we borrow money and keep it for even more than 10 years without using it for the purpose for which we borrowed it. So some of us keep asking, if we borrow money, let's say in 2022, and you are going to use it in 2026, why couldn't you have waited to pick this money in 2026? Are you aware that you are now choking Ugandans with the interest rates that come with such a loan? Are you aware that by keeping it redundant without using it, inflation is catching up with it? So if it was supposed to build a school, it is not going to build the same school. It is going to build a half. So somehow people are preoccupied with how much am I going to get? If we got this loan, can we use some of the money as fast as we can? Possibly we shall put it back later. It shouldn't surprise you that even in some ministries, some projects we borrow for them twice or thrice. That is why the poor planners that I'm talking about, we are not even ashamed to again present before Parliament a budget for Lubowa. Even when they know that the money they have put in Lubowa is still questioned.
There's
And there's no
accountability.
There
accountability.
is no accountability for the money so far. There is no hospital called Lubowa, but still they bring a budget for Lubowa.
For more money. Yeah.
The same that I talked about under the Commonwealth Resort Munyonyo. They bring money under Munyonyo. Suniri tells them, look here, I did not call you to come and invest in my hotel. I am self-sustaining, I'm sufficiently financed. I didn't want your money. I'm not going to account to anyone. You say, let's give more. What type of planners are these? For me, that is where my dissatisfaction comes from.
Yeah.
That if we had people who really care about this country, we would have progressed. Agatha, there are countries whom we were at the same level with.
Yes.
At a time President Museveni came to power.
Singapore.
When you look at countries like Singapore, when you look at countries like Qatar, you look at countries like even this Sudan. By 1986, their GDP was even less than ours. But you see where they are. For us, we are still at 26. They are far, far beyond our GDP. What do? They plan better. Giving their countries, maybe looking at the comparative advantage of their countries. To see that if we have an advantage, for example, for us, Uganda, we have an advantage of a good climate. How do we make use of this good climate and possibly up it a bit. The other day when we were still discussing the budget framework paper, I kindly told the planners that if they can put more into water for production, we shall be able to harvest year in, year out. Countries like Qatar that I'm talking about, it's a desert. But they can export fruits. They can export commodities that are from farms. You go to Egypt, you see what they are doing with their people. They have zoned their countries that when you go to Egypt, even Israel, it is also a dry area.
And Egypt uses the same river that
they use a river that starts from Uganda to export agricultural commodities.
To Uganda.
To Uganda now. But Uganda, which prides of having the Nile, is just playing with the waters. We can only go there, do crafting. They call it rafting.
Yes.
We just go raft and we make it a day. While the Egyptians are making proper use of the water that we have. We have a lot of water bodies in this country. I was telling people that Nyamwamba causes a lot of havoc for the citizens. If that water was tapped and possibly used for irrigation, have as much irrigation schemes coming from this water, the problem would be sorted. So the biggest challenge is with planning. I at some other point asked the government of Uganda, when Ugandans hear that members of parliament have received 200 million for cars, each one of them begins to wonder, which kind of car is this one that costs 200 million? Because the ordinary Ugandan that the members of parliament represent, even getting 10,000 is a big challenge. So when the member hears that this member you voted yesterday has gotten 200 million,
for a car only without a salary,
it becomes a very serious issue. So we advise the government, just like you do to other agencies of government,
even the previous parliaments.
Yes, if the way you do to other agencies of government, the judiciary, the ministries and other departments, why don't you buy cars? Put them there.
And MPs receive them.
And MPs receive them when they leave the cars for government.
Actually, that is more expensive.
No, because now
it would be cheaper.
Agatha, that takes away the sentiments of the Ugandans.
But it also doesn't just take away the sentiments. The Minister of Finance came up with a new policy where they have a particular threshold that they can spend of money on a car. And 200 million is not their budget.
But the officials in ministries drive cars that are more expensive than 200 million. Those cars are chauffeured and maintained by government. Is that what we want also? Add maintenance costs?
I am saying, there is also looking at the mindset of the Ugandan. That Ugandan, the other issue would have been possibly reducing the parliament. Because we kept talking about a big cost of administration. I was looking at this budget, Agatha, and I saw that there is a 5 point...
Can we get back to parliament in our next session? Because we want to actually, because she also raises it, we want to now discuss the budget of parliament. Because this show is about parliament. In comparison with other arms of government,
like the judiciary,
in comparison with what Ugandans, their representatives expect and what they are going through. But let's hold that there, and I ask Charity one question before we go for a break about still what Honorable was talking about, the involvement and starting with the planners. Honorable says Ugandans have this information.
Agatha, before we go to Charity, when I talk about the planners of this country, let Ugandans not misunderstand me to mean the National Planning Authority. We have one of the best national planning authorities. The National Planning Authority has all the time been raising this red flag. Here we bet the National Planning Authority has gone according to the dictates of the National Development Plan. They have guided government, but when it comes now to the implementation, that is where we go wrong. So when I talk about the planners, I mean the managers of this enterprise called Uganda, beginning from the president.
I hear you, because actually the Constitution says that the president is represented by
Yeah.
the minister to table the estimates.
Through the Public
So the
Finance
planners
Act.
in this case, you would start with the president,
Yes.
you would go to the Minister of Finance,
Yes.
you would go to Parliament that
Yes.
has the final say
Yes.
on what budget is passed. And that's
Yeah.
what I want to ask Charity. You have a parliament whose committee, I'm going to read for you some of the things they said. This budget was not compliant with the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility in terms of how much money you're putting into paying the debt we are
Domestic.
talking about.
Okay.
Because the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility talks about 14.6 of your revenues should be the ones at most going
Servicing.
into servicing debt. In our debt, it is 18.7 billion. It also talks about how it is non-compliant with the NPA. She's talking about the National Planning Authority.
Yeah.
So National Planning Authority makes good plans. The NDP3 is there. But you have people, the executive, who will not comply with it. It talks about non-alignment with the budget framework paper. But that same committee goes ahead and passes that budget. Yet Parliament has that power. For me, that's what, I say it here on this show every day, that I think the anger of the citizens to Parliament, even me, especially me, is the power that the Constitution gives Parliament. If it said we are not passing this budget, what will the executive do? It will just comply. But after listing all these non-compliance issues, you have a Parliament that goes and passes the budget the way it is, passes State House budget, passes a budget that is not looking at the health sector that its committees talked of, the education sector or the agriculture sector. What is wrong with Ugandans when it comes to that? At the level of the president, many have said, he's like too powerful for Ugandans to touch. They have failed to. What about Parliament? What can Ugandans do to make sure we have a Parliament that will see that a budget that has come from the executive is not people-centered, and really ensure that the people that sent it, that it represents, get something out of it?
And I think that's a very interesting question. When this Parliament came on, the 11th Parliament, remember previously we had the Tojikwatako.
Yes.
And the people were mad that they had told their members of Parliament to retain that clause within the Constitution. And it
After
had
we
been
spent money for them to go and
consult the
them.
people.
Yes.
29 million
and
per member.
And they had gone against the will of the
I
people.
thought it was just 20.
And done what they did.
29.
Eventually, this Parliament came as a wheel of hope because the people dropped the ones they perceived to have gone against their will in the election.
Some.
Yeah, some of them and others, but the majority,
Yeah.
they dropped them.
Yeah.
And so they came with what they called the wave. And there was a team of 100 young MPs. I call them young because when the new people came, they seemed to stage young people. And so these young MPs were looked at as the people who would go into Parliament and then now push for the agenda of the ordinary citizen. But we've not seen that happening. We've seen them swallowed up. And they're not saying anything on the side of the people. They wrote a report, the minority report, which you've read of Mwanga Chivumbi. They also wrote the alternative policy for government, which the leader of opposition presented. But it stopped there. They didn't continue to put pressure, which we had expected. Because the way they came in, it looked like they would be the people to keep pressurizing on behalf of the people. They didn't. Instead, they seem to be swarmed by what happens around Parliament, and the ordinary person continue to lose out. But I want to dwell a bit on the question of the National Development Plan 3. Because the National Development Plan 3 puts the Ugandan at the center of decision-making. It puts the Ugandan at the center of pushing for accountability. How? Through the mechanism they have come up together with the local government called the parish development model. If you look at the 7 pillars of that parish development model and how it is supposed to work right from the parish, The ordinary Ugandan can be able to follow the little money that government has sent to improve its health and education at the parish level and ask the people who work within that parish where that money is going.
The little money is the right word.
Yes. It is the little money, but you see the way the model had been done, because it's going to be worked on for the first time in this budget. We don't know what will happen when we come back here next year to talk about the next budget and how the model panned out. But the National Development Plan 3 does look at this poverty and looks at what are the things we can do to help the Ugandan get out. And one of the things they emphasize, apart from the parish development model, they also emphasize the question of agriculture. And if you look at the title of that budget, that is the contradiction, the total departure, you know, the contradiction of the title of full monetization of Uganda's economy, dealing with the unemployment levels, which are at 64% NDP 3 state seat. That's 64% unemployment rate.
Yeah.
NDP 3 states it. Now, by the time NDP 3 is stating that we have this huge unemployment rate and we are putting our efforts should be more in modernizing agriculture, dealing away with unemployment and creating wealth, they have realized that this would help us eventually with taxes. It would help us eventually with improving household incomes, because that is where they were looking when they did that plan that they have done. And it's a very good grandiose plan. For me, if anything, then let's just follow the NP3, or we pick the people who are in the National Planning Authority and give them key roles when it comes to budgeting at Parliament level, and reduce on the powers in Article 79 of these members of Parliament, because Article 79 gives them a chance to decide their own emoluments. And that is why the Honorable Kiiza here was saying, no, take that right, reduce on that right. Because if you tell me to determine what I want, I will cut for myself the biggest part of the cake. If 847...
didn't say that, did she?
She
I
did.
think Honorable Winnie
She
Kiiza
said
is saying people should just change those planners.
No, she said for the cars.
Oh.
Let's take that to the finance ministry to be the one to buy it. Let's centralize some of those processes. So if 847 billion, Agatha, is for Parliament and 318 billion is for the judiciary, what makes Parliament a very bigger arm of government than the judiciary is part of the things that I wonder about.
We are going to start from that. I want us to discuss two issues here, the debt in detail and Parliament. And for me, before we go for a break, the better idea I have for cars of MPs is that they be like us. You earn a salary of 6 million.
And buy it for
you
yourself.
Determine, I can afford a car of 5 million. Let me buy that car. Because we are giving them a salary.
Yes.
Which should be, like, because if you are telling Ugandans to tighten their seatbelts, you should be seen to tighten them too as a government. But let's take a short commercial break and we'll come back and we'll continue with this discussion on the budget. We'll pick it up from the budget of Parliament that Charity talks about. We'll be right back.
The Citizens Chat Room happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Thank you for staying with us. And like I said before we went for a break, Charity touched issues that we need to expound on. And I thought we should really pick up the conversation from the parliamentary budget. Parliament has been allocated 847 billion. To be exact, I think it's better to say 847.5 billion this financial year. And that's and we have seen a steady increase of Parliament budget over the years. It was 659.2 billion last financial year, which is 2021, 2022, 2021, 2022. So you are looking at an increment of almost 200 billion right now. It was 607 billion in 2020-2021 financial year. It was 622 in 2019-2020. But for like context, I'll also talk about the three far back years of 2013, 2014, 2015. In 2012-2013 financial year, the budget of Parliament was 232. So when you look at the increment now, 10 years later, it's an increment of over 600 billion. In 2014, 2015, it was 258. In 2016, 17, it was 348 billion. So we are asking, this trajectory that we are seeing of a parliament that is almost getting to 1 trillion, which is also higher than these 3 critical sectors we were talking about here, especially health and education, and agriculture. What is this that we are dealing with here? and I know you can talk about catering for the increased number of MPs and all that, but do we have value for money in this? Should I start with you, Charity?
I don't know, the choice is yours.
No, let's start with you. You know
the painful thing with everything you're reading there is that disconnect that I told you about, Agatha. There is a total departure. Because when you look at the health budget, is 1.4 trillion. And okay, let's just compare the same apples, because they said you don't compare goats with cows. So health and comparing it with parliament would be goats and cows. Let's compare the arms of government. There are 3. There's the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament. Parliament is taking the lion's share, if you look at it. The executive, yes, this time in this budget has 77 billion.
777, yeah.
777 billion.
But where would the office of the president be?
That is not only executive.
Yeah,
that is
just
only the
State House.
presidency.
That's
House.
State House.
So the executive has how much?
You would have
now let's first let's go to the whole arm of the executive.
Charity, you'll have to add so many votes under that.
If you want to talk about the executive,
how much
there are so many votes under the executive, because now you will see
even Ministry of Finance would be there.
Now, Ministry of Finance, we do have its budget. It's here. It is 2.3 trillion.
I actually think the first comparison you started with
might bring it better.
Yeah.
No, you know the problem with that one. No, not of the judiciary. I had gone to the health sector. Now, that one is sector by sector. They might want to argue. And what I wanted to demystify was the argument of the arm.
It's a sector which is bigger than parliament.
The arm of government.
We have hospitals undering. We have staff of all these hospitals, health centers, and all that. So it is actually, for me, it actually would explain it better. But if we went back to the executive, and we have to look at money spent on RDCs,
and
money
finance.
spent on advisors, money spent on ministries, because the ministers fall under that arm. When you talk about 777 billion, which is State House alone, doesn't even
get half of the amount.
Not even a quarter.
Okay.
Yes.
But we have the judiciary, which plays a critical role in this country.
Yeah.
And the judiciary is only getting 318 billion. And if you look at the increment over the years for judiciary, actually, it has not been going in billions. Here you talk about an increment of 10 billion almost every year for parliament. But for judiciary, you're talking about
10
million.
billion. We are now talking about an increment of 200
billion. That is in the last one.
This year.
Yeah, but previously when you went in the years back, it was 10, 15 billion. When you went back in time, look at the years that you went back in time. The 2015, the 2013, the 2012. The back in time was about 15.
2021 and 2022, 2023, it was also about 40 billion. Yeah.
Okay.
Increment.
Yeah.
So you see that the increments that happen for parliament are astronomous.
Yeah.
But the ones that are happening for judiciary are minimal. Because for judiciary, you keep seeing things like 200 million, 150 million. That's the money that they increase with. And right now we are at 318 billion. Actually, it's only now that the president has appointed judges to the High Court. He has just appointed them, I think, this week on Monday or Tuesday. And we've had all these case backlogs happening because of underfunding for judiciary. We even have key central activities that should happen between coordination in the judiciary, but are not happening because of budget constraints. But when you look at parliament, and for me, that is why I told you about the other thing of emoluments. If I am going to determine my own emoluments, and I told you 1 night out for the speaker, 1 night out. If she sleeps, in another country. She's going.
I think not per diem would work even in country, right? If she went,
The per
I don't
diem
think
out
so.
is different from the per
Yeah.
diem in the country.
Yes. So I'm talking about the per
the
diem
one
out.
outside the country.
Yes. She is given 6.6 million. Of course, that converted to dollars might be a different story right now and whatever. But still, I am counting as an ordinary Ugandan. And remember that when the Honorable Tayewa, the Deputy Speaker, had come into the House, the President had said, let's get rid of travels
That's
abroad.
what I know. I knew. I am surprised that now you say that much is budgeted for trips.
Yeah, he
Those
said,
that been
let's...
halted.
He said, let's get rid of these travels. And he said that the Parliament pushed back. They told him, no, we have to go. We have to strengthen our parliament. There should be benchmarking. We even have to go to Commonwealth. We are members of the Commonwealth. They argued out their point. And so he quietly chickened out of, we cannot sponsor them. And they've continued with these trips. Recently here, Tayewa was in London. I think about last month.
I think even now there is a committee that is in Arusha. Of course, the travel happens. I thought they had scaled them down.
No, they did not scale them down. They continued to happen for key officers and also for the officers of parliament. Now, for me, what I had expected is that, during COVID-19, Agatha, there is a lockdown that happened. And they told us now nothing is going to happen. We are frozen because we must see how to resolve a crisis. But we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis. We don't have fuel. We don't have food. We're in as the ordinary Ugandans, we're in a crisis. We want something. And we are saying, we were waiting for the president to tell us, okay, now I have frozen my own budget by half. Okay, I have tightened my seatbelt by making sure half of this budget I have cut it to give it to organizing maybe the oil reserves. And now, because I have led by example, Parliament is also cutting its own to this amount to go to the oil reserves. Yeah. But the Minister of Energy is being given 1.4. UNRWA instead is given 2.8. And the Minister of Energy is the one that is central to the oil, which you're talking about as the money you're looking at coming to service your debt. Yeah. And you're saying these are the people who are going to make sure they do feasibility studies. They are going to make sure they organize Ugandans along the production of the production chain, but you are underfunding them. And then you are saying, so the contradiction is real. What I had expected was for them to say, okay, now we are in a crisis. We're in a crisis. We're not talking how we normally talk. We are not budgeting the way we normally budget. So now we're going to budget a crisis budget. And the bigger money is going to parish model because for it has these Ugandans who are going to benefit from it. The second big chunk is going to the Ministry of Energy because we're looking at getting oil and making sure that the proceeds that come from this oil are going to service our debt. The other money, of course, is in infrastructure. And then we go to health and education because that is human capital. We want our people alive and able to produce. And you told me to talk about that for a bit. Every time I talk about the health story, it either leaves me in tears or it leaves me with more pain. And I wonder, why did I start to even talk about it? Agatha, people go to Mulago here. And if you don't have even 500 shillings to pay for your patient, first to get a doctor to come to attend to them. And they will never tell you, they will just keep passing you like this in the wards. These people get accidents on the road all the time. They're knocked by borders and they're taken into Mulago. And their patients lie there. I met a man who had just survived. He said nobody told him all the doctors needed was for him to pay 600 first for him to be touched. Until one of the nurses said, except you pay this 600.
Is that 600,000?
600,000. But of course, he had no money. 600,000 for me.
Let me save you and we first come down from the pain of the health sector. And I first ask Honorable to chip in on the parliament budget. Honorable Winnie has been leader of opposition who sits on the parliamentary commission, which really, at the end of the day, is the one that decides that budget. You could have an idea and explain to us why we have a parliament that gets more and more expensive each day, seeing this trend, and if it will be it will not reach time when it's not sustainable.
Actually, I personally, when I was still in parliament and acting as the leader of the opposition, we always told Ugandans
Yes.
that as long as you are, and you said it, that as long as you continue demanding for more constituencies, the burden of parliament will increase. When you are looking at the adjustments in terms of the budget for the years before this current parliament, you need to find out at that time how many were the members of parliament. This parliament had an increase of close to 30 members of parliament.
More than that.
I think
More
about,
than
about
30.
100.
There are 100.
More than 30, okay,
There are
about
100.
100. So all that is a cost to the citizens of Uganda. And we kept telling them, the more you ask for constituencies, the more burden you put onto yourself. So this 100 has to be catered for. There are more staff that have been recruited in parliament who will also need to be enumerated under parliament. Well, the issue of the parliamentary commission deciding what the members of parliament should take has also been an issue that we talked about. Can we look for a salaries and emoluments commission that will determine the wages and salaries of all workers of this country? You know, many people target parliament. They don't know how much the leaders of the authorities get. Do you know that the ED of Kampala
used to get 48 million?
Not used. Gets 48 million.
She
The
thought
governor of Bank of Uganda gets 58 million shillings
per month.
Per month. So many people are getting a lot of money, but because we don't know, we target the one that we know, who is parliament. And people are right, because these are their representatives.
Yeah.
They don't know that the money that also goes to the ED Kampala, the Bank of Uganda governor, is part of this that is swelling up the budget, and a lot of it going into administration. When you look at the budget, you said that we just go to parliament. When you look at the budget of local governments, the 5 trillion that goes to local governments, more than 50 of it
is salaries.
Is salaries for the workers, because also the local governments have become many with the number of the number of cows, the number of CFOs, and all the council chairpersons and members of the executive. So much of the 5 billion goes to service the cost of administration.
Yes, yes.
So even in parliament, that 800 billion that we are talking about, all of it is servicing administration, because in parliament they will not tell you they are servicing salary. They are servicing anything. They will not tell you. Possibly part of the money that is coming into parliament is for completion of the administration block. Possibly. That is why.
I don't know. We never get to know
that is why,
the
because
breakdown.
the money under parliament
is
also catering for their expenditures in terms of constructions that may be taking place around parliament. However, if there was a salaries commission that would determine the emoluments and salaries
across
for all workers
board
of Uganda, this would be put to rest. So we wouldn't have a lot of disparities in terms of salaries. That is why you see that even a president can raise up and say, for the science teachers, I put you at this amount. The science teachers go through the same education system with the arts teachers.
Yeah.
You are talking about now having to also get social workers who will deal with other issues that are not science related. But you are beginning to create a disaster in the education system where the other teachers are feeling they are not wanted. So it is the same thing here that is happening. Members of parliament getting more money than other workers, and people, when they look at what maybe the output in parliament, they think it is not worth the salary they get. But if there was a salaries commission that was looking at all workers and maybe say with the parliament, because parliamentarians are bosses, parliament, then executive and judiciary, this is the money that you will get. Charity. Before you even look at what parliament gets, compare it with what the president is taking. The president's of the state house, Janet's home, with the President Museveni, 777 billion for the home, state house.
Where in Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi's report says,
yes,
all the children of the president are grown-ups.
All the
children, the 3 daughters that we know are married. So we are actually
You
paying
see?
that much for 2 adults.
For 2 adults to sit State House.
Who actually also have a salary. One is the salary
One is
as
the minister
president.
under the Minister of Education. The Minister of Education is catered for. Now we have Office of the President with 217. President State House has President Museveni. Office of the President has President Museveni. Don't forget that he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The defense, the 3 trillion, he's the one to oversee it. That classified expenditure that I talked about, you know, somehow I tell people, you go for these members of parliament, you don't know where the money is.
They're low-hanging fruits.
The low-hanging fruits are the ones that you go for. There is money that is swindled within here.
But Honorable, let me just come in there that the Auditor General's report from 2001 on Parliament has not been any kinder. The Auditor General seems to say accountability is lacking on most of the documentation, that Parliament gives half of the accountability for the monies that is spent on them. So then the question becomes, if the Auditor General is raising these issues, why then do we keep increasing this? Okay, so the President and the Presidency and the Executive is doing it wrong. Should we follow the same journey?
Yes.
Is there a place where the buck can stop? And for me, I think that's where I'm coming from. When I tell you about the painful hospital story and rearranging these budgets to deal with this.
Also, we look at MPs as people who understand
Our
plight.
The common person.
Our plight. Because we send you there, you come down to us and see what we go through. Because when MPs are giving 2,000 for votes, and people are happy to receive 2,000, that alone
should
paints
tell you
the picture of the situation these people are going through. And like Charity is saying, so you are the ones we send, you are the ones we feel really that we should hold on the neck and say, you say that no, this is wrong. Because we don't actually blame government and Parliament only for taking a lot of money, but also for allowing money go to places it should not go to. And I wanted to give you some information.
Agatha, before you even bring that information, the reason why Parliament is not going to say no to some of these exorbitant budgets and unrealistic budgets from either State House or from President's office or from Rugowa and where, because they know that should they refuse, then theirs will be questioned. So somehow they have been conscripted into the what? Into accepting the bad manners that is happening in Parliament.
Because recently the whole Parliamentary Commission, led by the Speaker, went to State House to ask the President to, among other things, to increase their salaries and staff, increase staff and their salaries. You wouldn't expect a whole head of Parliament, which is the one in charge of this appropriation, to go and, because what are you, because it's carrot and stick, yeah? If you want this, I will have this. And that's not good for democracy.
The unfortunate bit is that also the Constitution gives a lot of powers to the President. To the extent that you find that even Parliament, the power that it has in the Constitution, it is again hidden down there.
Correct.
Under the Presidency.
Yes, it is.
The budget is the President's budget. So if Parliament has anything against this budget, they have to go to the originator of the budget. That is why President Museveni has again a presidential budget group. He has a committee in State House that drafts this budget for him. So if Parliament has anything to do, it has to go back to the owner of the budget. Yeah. As much as Parliament is given the responsibility of passing the budget, but the budget is for the President. So the President has to agree in principle to whatever is going into his budget. So Parliament also can pass it. However, the Act...
And that's true. I just wanted to supplement that. Actually, the Constitution says that even money to leave the consolidated fund, he has to be asked. He
has to be asked. That is why, for me, I feel that Ugandans should target that person who has full power and authority. Well, I don't take the rope away from the members of Parliament because they also have this power given to them by the Constitution. You are the ones in charge of passing this budget. But we have this pretendant who has powers even over his own members of parliament, to the extent that should they say, no, we are not passing the budget of the president, then they are summoned. How do you deny your father?
As we speak, they have been summoned over an issue in the budget.
But even when we think we have passed the budget,
they are still being summoned.
They are still being summoned. Even that budget you have passed is not good. Don't get surprised that tomorrow...
No, but Agatha, they seemed to be right on that one. The 900 billion for treasury and withdrawal from the treasury. That's a lot of money, Agatha.
But
900 billion can put up a reserve, a quick reserve for us to get that pump price stabilizing.
You may think it is only the 900 billion for the treasury operations. It might be the Pineti money. It is among the monies that were rejected by Parliament. It may be the money going to Sudir.
The 800
billion. 800. And I can tell you, Ghana, that Sudir has been managing his hotels very well without even any government intervention. We don't know why government of Uganda, and in fact, for me in 2008, when they were bringing that partnership of Sudir with government, I asked them, just recently, we said the government is a very bad manager. We sold all the Uganda hotels that we had.
Yes,
if you thought you had intentions of running hotel business, why on earth could you have liberalized your hotels under the privatization program? You should have reserved your hotels. But now here we are, after we have sold our hotels at cheap money, moreover, then we got to waste more money into other people's ventures. So that is the poor planning that I'm talking about. You know, Agatha, we sold that Bowman house. It was for government. After selling it, we started renting the same house from the person we sold the house. And the money we sold to him, we were giving it to him in 1 year as rent. He gives us 1 billion for the whole building. Then we start paying 1 billion in terms of rent for just 1 year. What type of planning is that?
But so, I will tell you a story about the Sudir partnership by someone who used to sit in those meetings from 2006 when we entered.
Yes, when we were going towards Chogam.
Yes. So this person who was supposed to be an economist is saying that this is not economics that works, as the new PSST calls it. They insist and put in money. After they put in money, government becomes officially a shareholder. So there are meetings of shareholders every other time. And in those meetings, government is not getting any dividend on that share. In those meetings, they are told the hotel is making losses. But we need this more money for this. Just like in this budget, they need money for a conference hall. So they'll say, we are making losses, but we need more money for this. And this economist said, so many times, not one time, said, but we have already seen, if the venture is not making money, we have already seen that it is bad business.
Yes.
Why don't we count our losses from here and stop adding more money?
Because we are going to service a debt.
I asked him, what would they tell you when you said that? I said, everyone keeps quiet. Because in that meeting, you have even people on the side of government who are happy to keep adding that money because they are getting it back somehow. So that means that from 2006 to now, we give money, but we don't get anything in return because the venture makes losses, apparently. But government is happy to keep adding money. When I read the 84 billion last night, I laughed and said, this guy told me this story so many years ago, like 10 years ago, but it is still here.
Yeah. So that is the country we are talking about. So for me, many times I tell people, yes, we look at members of parliament and we think they are the people who are supposed to fight for us. They are supposed to carry the biggest burden. They are actually supposed to understand. But members of parliament will tell you, look, the money we get, the money you talk to will tell you this money we get is the only money that trickles down to the common person. Though that is a very wrong also explanation.
But Charity talks about where it goes, which is actually wastage and extravagance. If it is true, and I have heard it as well from reliable sources, that part of this money you want to buy a house for the speaker, to buy a house for the deputy speaker. I also hear that they want to pay the areas in rent where the speaker now has been staying in Nakasero since she became deputy. Also, you have been reading a parliamentarian for a long time. Is it okay that we now start buying houses for Speaker and Deputy Speaker who are also salaried, like the people we talked about, and also given housing allowances? But also, what happens when they leave those offices?
Well, I will say that possibly it is going to be a new practice that Parliament of Uganda is thinking of having an official residence of the Speaker. And if they are going to have an official residence for the Speaker, then it would mean the component of accommodation that is given to the Speaker will be chopped.
That's the idea, but
That
we
is
are
the
not sure
idea.
that's what
Because
will happen.
some other members who are entitled to such amount of money, others choose to either go and rent a house. They start paying the money actually that is coming from Parliament goes directly to the owner of the house. What others do is that I am entitled to this much. For a year, I will have gotten this much. What they do, they ask maybe a mortgage under that money. They build their own residence. It becomes theirs. So if Parliament is coming up with an idea of having an official residence for the Speaker,
Is it a good idea?
it is a good idea for the country on
For the
condition
country
that when
tightening
this,
its belts?
when this country, when this Speaker leaves, the next Speaker gets into the House. Hopefully they are not going to ask for it like they asked for the one of Mutebile, saying the official residence of the bank manager, the manager, the governor, we are asking that government surrenders it.
When they
to
were
the
asking,
Speaker.
Honorable,
But
they
you
had
should
already got land to build another one. By the time we had about asking, they had already given the house to the governor.
Now, for me,
Before he died.
For me, what hurts me is that they may maintain the money they give to the Speaker as rent,
housing allowance.
as housing allowance, and then they say, go and get the official residence. There will be a discrepancy.
Charity.
And that must be
Ironed out early.
ironed out early. Two,
is ironed
they
out?
should also know that this person called the Speaker.
No, I think that
Charity,
Ugandans should.
Yes, Ugandans
should
know,
follow
so
it.
that when the members of Parliament are also looking through the budget, some people don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of these budgets.
Yeah.
The other issue
It
they
is
should
voluminous.
yes, the other issue they should know is that
And not many also
we put a
understand.
law that gives benefits to the speakers when they leave. Among the benefits is a house.
They also have them. Housing allowance.
Yes,
they do. Housing
but
provisions.
even
They're already there.
even when they have housing allowance, we assume that that house they are going to use their housing allowance to rent. But on leaving as a past speaker, former speaker, is entitled to her house, is entitled to a car, is entitled to
Domestic workers being paid.
is
Medical.
entitled to medical, is entitled to security as a former speaker.
Those.
Even a deputy speaker,
But that
by the
costs
way.
me, the taxpayer.
Yes. So even this money that we are talking about in this budget, possibly part of it is going to take care of the bills of the former speaker. Remember, we also have the former deputy speaker, the former speaker second, the former deputy speaker,
And speaker.
and then the former speaker Electoral and former deputy speaker Electoral
Kadaga.
We have the
Charity.
former prime minister, the
Charity.
former president. So
Charity.
there are a lot of people
For your
who are supposed to
information.
be
No,
serviced
this
by
now
this.
is that is even more dangerous.
Very.
The
For your
the former
information,
deputy speaker,
there
the
is-
speaker, and
there is
and
a
former
law.
vice president.
Oh, this
You
is
are saying
dangerous.
that is costing you the taxpayer. But
Yes.
I will give you information that as we speak, the law allows, and I think she does, they do, for Kadaga to get benefits as former deputy speaker.
Yes.
And as speaker.
And former speaker.
Yes.
And she already also still gets benefits and allowances as
As
current
a member of parliament.
minister.
But
for
look,
East
even
Constitution- for East
second,
Constitution.
let me tell you,
Second, yeah.
So I think the solution for civil society is that we need to advocate for a reform in
Yeah.
that law.
Yes.
That law will be aligned
Because
to
even-
deal with the leakages. Let me tell you, Agatha, in Georgia.
Before that,
Yes.
second gets a benefits as deputy, vice
Former
president.
deputy speaker.
Former vice president gets a benefits as speaker, gets benefits as former
Former deputy
deputy
speaker.
speaker. So
he's
for
getting
those-
three.
Yes, three.
Yet we have a law that doesn't allow a double drawing.
Exactly, from the consolidated. Yes, it is in the constitution. And the constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Triple.
No, so I don't think the law allows it. If the constitution is saying,
nobody
then
has
it looks like
followed it.
nobody has. So I think now the lawyers, we have a point here now to take a constitutional interpretation.
You might not have known. Because you know, for
I honestly didn't know. I didn't know he was earning all those benefits. I'm happy to be in this conversation
when
now.
I went for a by-election in 2012, you know, they had given me that money for the car in 2011 when we came as members of parliament. Then I was thrown out
of parliament.
And I went for a by-election. So when I came back from the by-election, I went to the speaker and I said, I'm a new Winnie.
I'm not the old one.
I'm not the old one whom you gave your car. Can you give me now the new car?
They gave you a new car.
Supposing I lost, you should have given a car to that person who came in. Can you give me the car? The speaker said, no, Honorable, we shall not give you the car because you are the same person who came. And I think I was asking Jacob Olanya. Then he told me at that time the speaker Kadaga was not in office, and it was the deputy who was there. He said, you know, you are the same. So we shall go and remove the veil. If you go ahead and say you are demanding for another car, we shall remove the veil. Now, in this case, we need to also remove the veil.
We do.
Second,
we are long overdue.
Second,
the
vice president.
An MP thrown out of parliament shouldn't go with that car.
Those are the leakages.
That is if the car was belonging to government.
The car belongs to that constituency.
It belongs to the MP.
It comes to Winnie's account.
It belongs to the MP.
That's okay. To the MP.
That's okay, but
so
now
I
the
just
leakage.
wanted to try to see whether the system is sensitive.
The leakage we need to deal with then, in this instance, is the buying of new cars for every new one that comes and the old one
now,
that
for
goes.
me, at that stage, then we said, I wanted to test this. But after testing it, I'm of the view that any member of parliament who has a petition
in court,
don't buy the cars. Because you may never know when they are thrown out.
But you are denying them their benefits as a member of parliament.
That was the issue. You are denying them their benefits
because
as members of parliament.
Legally,
they are the members of parliament. Now, legally, that Winnie lost the seat.
Yeah, that is true.
So the one who came was a new member.
No,
because I take the oath again.
I think the lacuna is now at, don't give a car to the individual. The car should belong to the honorable member.
Can't happen.
Wait, Charity. If the car belongs to the honorable member of Kasese district, when she leaves, she's no longer entitled to that car. Because it was for the...
You know, when you give the money through my account,
it's mine.
I am not money.
I'm saying that's where the lacuna
That is where the lacuna is, and we now go back to what we said. If government pays cars for the members of parliament,
they would
when
retain
a member
their cars.
leaves, their car remains in the pool. And then whoever comes takes up the car.
I'm going to organize another discussion where we discuss the lacunas
within the law.
And I think that would work very well because we should follow that.
So at least now one of the benefits of we were talking about the House for the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. And I was saying that it would be a good thing if they are doing it in good faith. But remember, this Speaker who is going to have entitlements of a house, a car, and nebigenderako. So you will move from this official residence to another official residence that will have been constructed.
Is it the same as staying with the one?
So you may find that every new parliament, if they will buy a new parliament, will buy a new house for the new speaker, because now we
at the cost of a taxpayer.
At the cost of the taxpayer.
Yet the new speaker can also give your argument that now this is a new, even if the new speaker is still honorable. Anita, for example,
when she takes a new term, she'll say, I'm a new speaker.
She has taken up new mandate.
I've sworn in afresh.
Because now, Anita Monk has the benefit for now, has the benefit of a deputy speaker, because she was served as a deputy speaker, whether 2 days or 3 days or 1 year, she served as a deputy speaker.
So she's receiving those benefits.
Automatically, She has
Because
qualified.
that's the precedent.
She has qualified for those benefits of a deputy speaker. She's now remaining to qualify for the benefits
Of
of
the
a
speaker.
which is in the law, and she's not cheating anyone.
Okay.
I
going to-
thought that on that point,
let me first ask a question. You can discuss them both together because I want us to wrap up the budget of Parliament. Under that budget, we talked of the wage bill of Parliament.
Yeah.
I think the staff of Parliament now the number stands at over 650 members of staff. And you were talking about those that have come in the last 1 year. You said 200. The number I know for a fact that I actually put on Twitter the other day is 177. But 177 of positions that were never advertised for Ugandans to fairly compete for them. But also 177, what it means is that there are many people who are rendered redundant because while they have been hiring, they really don't have any power to fire. Yeah. So I know for a fact that there are some directors of Parliament who are redundant, no office. They just removed you from your office as a director where you were, and now you are really nowhere. About 5. Their job security is threatened because they know we are here, we are not doing anything. Anytime we can be retrenched. And those also include members who were on the contracts committee that refused to approve a contract that didn't meet the standards that was also irregularly dissolved. So when you're talking about what you want to talk about, I want you to add in that the wage bill of Parliament, the irregular recruitment, the lack of job security that is there now. What can be done? For the law we've seen, you can go to court about it. What else do we do to make sure that we are really remaining in the realm? We are not over increasing unnecessarily staff of a certain entity, especially Parliament, which is what we are talking about now.
I was saying I needed to first start at this one.
Yes.
Because the case of Georgia, I love. Honorable Winnie said when President Museveni came and took over Uganda, there are countries where we were even better, and we were better than that country called Georgia in the Soviet Union. We had a better GDP, we had better roads, we had better education. Georgia right now, go and visit Agatha. You will come back to tell your story.
You're talking about the state in the
USSR.
Yeah.
One of the things that small little country did was to deal with the question of corruption squarely on its head. Everything we've talked about today, we have already seen leakage, which is amounting to over 500 billion in leakage just. If we picked the money we have seen happening in leakages and reassigned it to the places where we are saying there is a shortfall and it's going to improve on the human resource and human capital development of Ugandans, I think we would move far as a country. And would also be able to cushion ourselves from irrelevant things like what we are facing right now, that people are being told, tighten your belts, eat cassava, wash with pawpaw leaves. But back to your question that you asked, and a very relevant question on employment and not following the structured methods for employment at Parliament. I think that politics has killed everything in our Ugandan society. That even when it gets to employment, we do not stay principled, but we go political. Now, every time we do not follow the rules, the regulations, the law, because the law is there to organize society. Law is there to ensure there is order and there is fairness, justice. When you apply the principles of equity, in fact, if you applied the principles of equity to this constitution, you will discover that there was nothing equitable.
Yes.
And there is no justification for anything that is being done. That's the same thing that you're talking about now here with the jobs. There's no equity there. If you can't put out the adverts, people can't compete fairly. Somebody is instructing you on phone, employ this. And we saw it during the time of the interview of the MPs on the land issue that they just got out recently, that land report, and how for Naguru and Nakau. An investor was paid twice. Government compensated them, and Rocco Company also compensated them 15 billion. And then you see the Land Commission, the Uganda Land Commission, saying, we came up with these rules to know how an investor will be appointed. And they didn't even follow.
An investor appointed?
Yeah, an investor
Selected,
given the investment. For you to receive an investment, we have a criteria that we deal with. They didn't follow any of the guidelines on their criteria. They said they were phone called and told, select, handpick this investor. It's the same thing you're telling me about Parliament right now, that you will be phone called and told the best candidate is Charity, the best candidate is Agatha. That is what is killing us. Until we get back to the basics, what are the guidelines for recruitment within Parliament? And are we recruiting according to those guidelines? If we are not, is there a way we
Their
can?
laws require them to advertise. I think there are only a few that you can handpick, those on contracts, and those are for the political heads.
Office.
So if it is speaker, but also not more than 5, you have a PPS. No,
PPS is a
it's
permanent.
permanent. Yeah. So you have a PA, I think.
Maybe, yes.
The PA, the driver. I think I had written them somewhere, but still, if they were to go by that, you wouldn't have those who are handpicked more than even 30. Then you go to the deputy speaker, also PA, driver. They should be 3 for each. That's why I put a maximum at 5. You go to the leader of opposition, the same thing.
Story.
But now, if you have over 177 or 200 million,
200
you can't
people.
explain that because the law, they have even regulations of staff of Parliament. They don't allow that.
You know the process of recruitment around Parliament, and I think in all other agencies of government, the process should be that a user department should indicate to the Human Resources Department
the need
that we have a gap here which we need
to fill.
Yes.
So the Human Resource Department forwards to the leader, the head of the institution, and says, look, we have this need.
The clerk in this
that
case.
is the clerk.
It is the clerk.
Yes.
So the clerk is supposed to now tell the speaker, Madam Speaker, I think the commission should sit to minute that these positions should be filled. So when you are doing your research or finding out whether the processes were made, that is where you should begin from. If Winnie has been recruited and has been possibly put into library, did the library indicate that they needed a staff?
Yeah.
And did the human resource officer forward to the clerk that there was need for such a staff? Because you must indicate this department lacks this caliber of officer. You even indicate the financial implication.
And the JD.
You say the person is responsible for this.
Yeah.
The job description.
The job description is responsible for this, and this is the scale of the staff that we are recruiting.
So when you advertise,
so somehow, at least when I was still a member of the Parliamentary Commission, some of those people we would have internal recruitments, and in the internal recruitments, we would either get from those who are working on contract.
Yeah.
We get from those who are working on contract, and we see whether we can put them into the official. And there were those specific adverts where we would say we are doing internal. These are internal. Those are the ones that are not of a higher magnitude. And we say these are internal recruitments, and for the internal recruitments, we are not going to advertise externally. So you get among the staff who were working on contract, you look for the ones you think are suitable, but they have to go through
the process.
The process of
the
internal process of doing interviews, and then you place. You just don't say now you are put there, you are put there. No, people go through
due
interviews,
process.
They go through due process. After all, by the time they even come in, including those ones that are on contract, by the way, they go through a process of interview. There are those who will be appointed by either the leader of opposition or the speaker or maybe the chief whip, and they don't go through the process. They reject them. So the assumption was that since these ones have gone through the internal processes of interview, they know the institution well. If there is this low-level cadre that we want, we can pick from the ones who are on contract and we make them permanent.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a higher cadre, they would see whether they can't first promote among the ones that they have, then they replace the ones that are supposed to replace them. Maybe they want a director, there is a deputy director. If you want a director, this one has been acting as a deputy director, first gauge whether this one can't just be promoted so that you advertise for the deputy director. And some of these adverts would be external.
Yes.
The public would know that there is an advert around Parliament. They are looking for this stuff. So for me, I don't remember when recruitments were done quietly, whether internal
To that
or
magnitude, by
external.
the way. To that magnitude.
So I
200
don't
people in a
really
year.
remember the time I was at Parliament where recruitments were done quietly and without anybody knowing, including those that were political appointees. Even the drivers would be vetted. They would go through the appointment process of Parliament. So those who are not found,
Some have gone through.
So
I
they
think
may
that
be
has
those
happened.
who might have gone through Parliament, through the interview system.
The internal-
But the issue is, how did the advert come out?
Yes.
Is it the user departments that generated the need for these people, or it is
A political need.
a political need that you just put in your department? You put, and you know, with human resource management, when you have people working in places where they don't qualify,
They don't
output
merit,
will be nil.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then when you have other people who are working and they don't feel comfortable where they are working, they feel their job is at stake, output will be very low because the morale
That
will
is
be down.
unfortunate.
So it is
Our time is
unfortunate
fast spent.
that maybe there is low morale. All I want to assume is that the due processes were followed, and if the due processes were not followed, I really don't know why.
Follow this with your closing remarks, Honorable.
And
this discussion.
I really want to continue encouraging members of Parliament to do their work. When it comes to the budget process, follow the process from the beginning up to the end. And I also would like to call upon the citizens. This budget affects you. It affects your level of income. It affects the household income. Like if they say there is money for the parish model, the 17 million that is going for every parish, for heaven's sake, is not,
100 million
even if it was 100 million, it is not going to change any person's
life.
Because 100 million is just a peanut. If you divided the 100 million per each parish, I have a parish that has 9 villages, and you put it according to villages. That means if each village has around 11, maybe 10 point something million.
Which is the problem with the parish model. You can't give a uniform figure.
Yes,
to all
the parishes, because they are parishes which have 4 villages.
But for me, I
Then
still think it's
parishes,
better than nothing.
But that is if it goes. Because even there is a problem of, okay, we are budgeting for it and we think it will go. Where did the money for the elderly go?
I know.
Didn't we budget for the whole country? Where did the money for the myoga go? Didn't we budget for it? So to me, I just look at these as political pronouncements. Okay. So when we mean tighten your belts, we need to see the people walking the talk. If you are the president telling people to tighten their belts, when you are not tightening yours,
for supplementary budget,
stop asking for supplementary budgets. Let us see you cut your convoy. Let us see you reduce on the way you spend money by giving it anyhow without any corresponding needs.
Charity, your closing remarks.
I think my parting shots are that we have been talking about corruption, Agatha, for a very long time. And we need to think about that corruption area and how we can purge those leakages and how we can reallocate this money. But secondly, I also think that the government, it's time they listen to their citizens, because there is no way you're going to sustain collection of taxes, maintaining that budget, without the citizens having marginal propensity to consume.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies, for coming. I am glad we had this discussion. I later realized we needed more time for it. I think we'll revisit some of the issues we just touched on here. Like I had said, we'll discuss maybe public debt some more and look at what the Auditor General's report says about commitment fees, for example, that this public debt that we incur, some of it is not used. It sits on accounts and just we accrue commitment loan fees on money that we are not using. So I think this discussion continues, like other discussions in this country. We just keep hoping that these things at some point change something or anything. And the budget of this year, just like of the coming financial year, just like the budgets before, I think I would be speaking for all Ugandans when I say it is not, the priorities are not what we wanted. And we expected, we always hope that Parliament can always come through for us and say that no, here we put our foot down and say that this budget should have, this money should have gone here instead of here, to really, at the end of the day, a population that is catered for and that is doing well is good for all of us, even the leaders themselves. I think it's wrong to look at it as I am the only one benefiting in this. Thank you very much for being with us today. Until next weekend, have a good weekend.